Most people think saving money is just about discipline, but there's a specific number, one that most financial experts rarely talk about directly, where everything changes, not because of some psychological trick, not because of motivation, but because of how money itself actually works once it reaches a certain mass. That number is $20,000. And once you understand what happens at that threshold, you will never think about saving the same way again. Here is what almost no one tells you. The average person in most developed countries is living within days of a financial emergency. Studies consistently show that roughly 60% of working adults could not cover an unexpected expense of $1,000 without borrowing or selling something. Think about that. A single car repair, a medical bill, one missed paycheck, and the entire financial structure collapses. This is not a story about lazy people or bad choices. This is what financial fragility actually looks like at scale. But something interesting happens when a person crosses the $20,000 mark in liquid savings. And it is not just about feeling safer. It is structural. The entire game changes. Let us start from the beginning. When someone has less than $1,000 saved, every financial decision is made from a position of scarcity. Every purchase involves a quiet calculation. Can I afford this right now? When a bill comes in unexpectedly, it creates genuine panic. Credit cards fill the gap. Debt starts accumulating. And once you are paying interest on debt, you are not building wealth. You are subsidizing someone else's. This is a trap most people never escape, not because they are bad with money, but because they never get far enough ahead to stop making decisions from fear. Now watch what changes as the savings number climbs. At $2,000, a person has a minimal cushion, enough for a small emergency, but not enough to feel confident. At $5,000, there is some breathing room, a modest buffer that reduces daily financial anxiety. But the behavior is still largely reactive. Something breaks. The savings absorb it, and the person is back at zero or near it. The cycle continues. At $10,000, something starts to shift. There is now a real emergency fund, 3 to 4 months of basic expenses for many households. This is the point where a person starts saying no to bad financial decisions because they actually have something to protect. The psychology begins to change, but the mechanics have not changed yet. Then comes $20,000. At $20,000 in liquid savings, 3 things happen simultaneously that do not happen at any lower threshold. The first is optionality. $20,000 is enough to genuinely change your circumstances. It is enough to move cities for a better job. It is enough to cover a down payment in many markets. It is enough to start a small business or fund a course that changes your career. Below this number, most major life moves are simply not available to you. Above it, options begin to open, and options are the foundation of real financial power. The second thing that happens is leverage. When you have $20,000 in savings, your negotiating position in life changes. You can negotiate salary from a place of patience rather than desperation. You can wait for the right opportunity instead of taking the first one available. Employers and opportunities can sense when someone needs something badly. That need costs you money in ways that are nearly invisible. When you have a cushion, you negotiate differently. You walk away more often. And walking away is one of the most underrated financial skills that exists. The third shift is compounding readiness. Most people have heard about compound interest. Few people understand how little it matters at low balances and how dramatically it accelerates at meaningful ones. $20,000 invested at a 7% average annual return becomes roughly $40,000 in about 10 years without adding a single dollar. But here is a more important insight. It becomes $80,000 in 20 years. And over 30 years, it approaches $150,000 from one single deposit. And that does not include the additional contributions that become far easier once good saving habits are already in place. This is the compounding trap in reverse. Below $20,000, the numbers feel discouraging. The growth is slow. It is hard to stay motivated. Above $20,000, the math starts working in your favor in ways you can actually see. And that visibility drives behavior. It makes the next $20,000 easier to save. And the $20,000 after that, Now consider what most people are actually doing with their money while all of this is happening. The average household in a country like the United States spends roughly $150 per month on subscriptions they rarely use. Another $200 to $300 on dining out beyond what they planned. Add impulse purchases, lifestyle upgrades after every pay raise, and the quiet financial leak of always having a car payment, and you have a portrait of a person who is earning decent money but never accumulating it. Income is not the same as wealth. This distinction is critical. Many high earners never cross $20,000 in savings, not because they cannot, but because every increase in income triggers an equal or larger increase in spending. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it is the single most effective mechanism for keeping people financially stuck at exactly the level where money never starts working for them. The people who break through this threshold think differently. They treat savings not as what is left over after spending, but as a non-negotiable payment made to their future self. They automate it before the money hits their checking account. They live on less deliberately, not because they cannot afford more, but because they understand that temporary sacrifice at the right moment creates permanent freedom later. There's a concept in finance called the flywheel effect. It comes from physics. A heavy wheel is incredibly hard to get moving, but once it reaches a certain speed, the momentum sustains itself and even accelerates. $20,000 in savings is where the financial flywheel starts to move. It is not the destination. It is the ignition point. Once you are past it, the next goal becomes 100,000. And the mindset required to go from 20 to 100 is different from the mindset required to get to 20. The hard part, the identity shift, the behavioral change, the proof to yourself that you can actually do this, that happens in the first 20,000. Everything after that is acceleration. The real lesson here is this. $20,000 is not just a number on a bank statement. It is a threshold where financial life begins to generate its own momentum, where security becomes real, where options become available, where money starts making money, and where the anxiety that quietly governs most people's daily decisions begins to loosen its grip. You do not need to be wealthy to get there. You do not need a perfect income. You need a decision, a plan, and the discipline to protect that number once you reach it. The people who build real wealth did not get lucky. They crossed this threshold first. Then they stayed the course. If this video gave you a new way of thinking about your savings, take a second to like it and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a video. The next one could be the insight that changes everything for you.